It's crazy because it brings me to a quote in which you said, when it comes to divorce, most men feel railroaded and they think, they expect to figure it out on their own. Unfortunately, that's the wrong answer. And you said the wrong text or comment can land them in a world of hurt. You kind of mentioned it earlier as well. That's why I created the Divorce Detox. What are some of the wrong choices have you seen or common pitfalls that you warn men about divorce?
This is a great question, and so I'll pick on a few here. Social media, it's everywhere, and it doesn't matter whether it's an app or a text. I especially tell guys, and it's easy for me to say this, and it's easy for you and I to talk about it versus being in the heat of the moment, and I've screwed this up in the past as well. Via text. If you're about to send off a fiery text, draft it, delete it, take 90 seconds and hold off before you do anything. Don't do hasty things like this, because once it's out, and the internet's unforgiving. And so that's one thing I've seen from a pitfall that's huge. I'm serious.
Welcome, everyone. This is your man, Michael Rashad Yerby, Unfiltered Fridays. We are here with another special guest. I'm going to give a second for everyone to get in the chat, get your questions ready as we start this conversation, this odyssey, this journey of something that is so momentous. Today, and only today, we have a special guest with us. Again, like I said before, hello and welcome. Today, we have a very special guest, Paul Murphy. Paul went through one of the hardest experiences life can throw at you, a brutal divorce. But he refused to be broken. Instead, he turned his pain into a purpose. Paul is the creator of Divorce Detox, a program that guides men through the heartbreak of divorce and into a place of hope and strength. He's a divorced dad himself, and he has spent over 10 years helping other fathers find their way. Paul's story is full of courage and heart. He proved that even after a marriage ends, a new beginning is possible. It's an honor to have him here to share how he empowered men and empowers men to rebuild their lives with confidence and clarity. Paul Murphy, everyone.
Michael, thank you so much for the opportunity and for the wonderful introduction, and to all of the folks who are jumping online. Great to have everyone here tonight. And disclosure for the whole group as we go through this whole conversation piece here is just remember, guys, there's no two divorces that are the same. And right now you got two guys who are live. We've both been through divorces. We each come with our own stories, our own backgrounds, etc. And that's all super important. To give your listeners a quick background of who I am and how I ended up where I'm at today, I was originally trained as a paramedic, and I worked in urban cities throughout the U.S. For years. And during that time, I did some publishing on the side, spoke at conferences, and kept on writing. Met my girlfriend at work as a medic, which, never date your partners when you're working, which Paul did. And then he turns around and gets married, and that's leading us down this path. So you get married, get the house, get married, get the house, have a couple kids, and get laid off. And then the marriage starts going a little rough. And then in the middle of us deciding to get divorced, get laid off again. Then divorce concludes. And then I get laid off yet again. And there's relevance to why I'm framing it all this way. And so what happens is 2023, my mentor says to me, Paul, what are you doing and what's going on? Because she's like, well, what are you doing? I was like, getting ready to write another article. She's like, no. Let's do some brainstorming here. Let's push Paul's boundaries. Let's find out what Paul has up his sleeve that we can use to help other people out. Because Paul, you've been in healthcare all your career, and let's see what other experiences you have where you might be able to help people going forward. So we did massive brainstorming sessions, and we came down to this topic that I could not believe kept popping up every time we did it, Michael. It was my experience with my divorce. I'm like, why does this keep coming in? And she says, because Paul, it's a big deal. It's not small, and you're a guy, and you keep bringing it up on this stuff. I'm like, whoa. So in 2023, I put the writing on hold, created this whole program. And mind you, over years, I've had friends who get divorced and everything else. We talk through and things like that. And we formalized this entire thing in late 2023 into 2024 with Divorce Detox. And how the platform exists today, it's actually an online digital platform, and it consists of 7 modules. And with each module, there's a bunch of lessons baked in there. And one of the cool aspects of this whole program is, we talk about budgets and child support. I'm not mocking that, by the way, making these faces going through it. The other thing that we do is we rip off the Band-Aid and we talk about emotions, mindset, heart set, because those elements tie into everything else you're doing with your divorce and ties into everything you're doing at work and all that jazz. There's learning activities throughout the program as well to help get people to actually use what they're reading and seeing, so that when they go to use it in their divorce process or mediation, what have you, they actually have these tools that they've already had a chance to try out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other aspect of this is a combination of videos. So there's PowerPoint slides that I talk through, but then I also get outside, do some candid one-on-one stuff just for myself outside, giving guys like, last minute thoughts. And another person said, let's take a shower moment, Paul, where you're describing different aspects. I go, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's true. And so the whole program is really designed to help guys get through the divorce successfully from A to Z. One unique aspect about this as well that my mentors pointed out to me, and I'm working with 2 mentors guiding me through this whole program as it takes it to the next level. Like, you have to realize you're a guy doing a program for guys, sharing your emotions, giving them tools, and realizing it's okay to be stressed. It's okay to feel these things and how to navigate these things successfully, because a lot of your traditional programs are done by females and the programs are wonderful. But now you got this guy who's coming out, who's helped all these people out in the healthcare aspect, now trying to help you out on a brutal life event, regardless of how amicable or not your divorce was, it is what it is. You're going through or have been through divorce, and we just kind of give a tool to help guys out. And so that's where we're at today. The program has been a very nice success. I have several clients and growing as we speak, and I've actually had some additional requests for additional content and some other modules that we're trying to build as we go. But that's the overview, Michael, and I appreciate again the opportunity to give you the description, and feel free to pepper me with questions, man. It's all good.
Yeah. Paul, just researching you, man, you are a very interesting guy. Like, we was talking backstage about who you are and just what you've been through. It's just pretty amazing. And we talking about the emotional aspect of it too. And I love it that your program really addresses that, because as men, sometimes we can hide, because the world kind of teaches us we got to be tough. We can't cry. We can't show emotion. We have to take everything on a chin, and just keep moving forward. But when it comes to your heart or somebody that you spent real time with, real vulnerability with, seen with, it could be very, very difficult. So I thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And with that said, my first question for you is, if you can take us back, because you was kind of talking about that, alluding to that, if you could take us back to your own divorce and what emotions hit you the hardest in those early days. And I would ask you for yourself, did you ever say to yourself, like, am I a failure because I couldn't go the distance with my spouse?
Great questions, and I'm making a couple of notes here. And so, starting this thing off here, and I will be very honest and open, and I had a relatively amicable divorce. However, and the reason I'm framing it this way is every divorce, in my opinion, has some type of brutalness to it, because it's going to eventually get to your emotions and your mindset. And we watched our marriage, at least I did. I watched our marriage fall apart over time. And so you figure we got married in 98, we got separated in theory in 2009, and our papers didn't get signed in 2013, which is a whole other chapter. You're right. And you're making, exactly. And people hear this from me and they go, holy cow. And there's reasons for all of this. And so the emotions, it's interesting. It was fairly mutual as far as, yes, we're going to get divorced. And one of the first elements that I felt was a bit of a panic, because I had never been through this and I didn't know what to expect. And to your point, the disappointment of, darn it, I'm not, I didn't get married to get divorced. We had kids in the whole 9 yards. So part of this for me was a little bit of a failure factor, because now one of us wants to get divorced and it's tough. And then from an emotional perspective that ties into it is, you mentioned this earlier, it's a gut punch, because now you're going to go down this path and you don't know what the future is going to hold. And divorce isn't just going in and signing a piece of paper. You're divorced for life, which in hindsight, for me, I completely underappreciate 100%. Because you're divorced for life with all of the family members and things of that nature. And I think the emotional roller coaster that I went through over time, peaks and valleys with some definite periods of anxiety, not so much hostility, because we knew that we were doing the right thing. And the other aspect of this whole thing that I kept in my mind, we have 2 adult children who have grown now out of the house, etc. But when they were younger, we were going through this process. I always made the kids the priority and put myself secondary, because I wanted them to not feel negative impacts of mom and dad going through divorce. And so I think the emotional aspect of the anxiety, the failure, and a little bit of panic as well, because you just don't know. Going through the divorce process and having layoffs is brutal as well, because now your finances change every time you get laid off, as we all know, and it impacts everything. So I think from those elements, those are the biggest elements from an emotional perspective you go through. And I can tell you that I was actually talking to a guy the other day. When he actually signed his paperwork, he did a tap dance. He was happy. He went out with buddies to a bar, tied one on, and celebrated. versus I walked out of the courthouse. I'll never forget this. And the day kept going. Traffic was still moving. Nothing changed. The only difference was I was divorced on paper from now. And that wasn't, it was almost a little bit of a sigh of relief, but I'm like, okay, now it's real. How do I move forward? How do I go from there? So I know that was a long-winded answer. I hope that gave some context and clarity, but it's a tidal wave.
No, I understand. I think about mine when I went through my divorce. It wasn't amicable between me and her. There was a lot of resentment on her side for me still to this day. And she did a lot of things to destroy me. Not hurt me, to destroy me. So
that's painful, period.
Oh man. And then, and then it leads to my second question. When you're divorcing, and you get to your friendships, y'all built friendships together, right? You have friends, a lot of homeboys, guys that that's your homeboy. And now y'all kind of broke up. Like, so what do your friends do? And what do your family members do in that aspect of a divorce? And how did you navigate through that situation?
That is one of the best. Yeah. And there's two layers here. There's the friends that you have, and then there's the family part. So I'm going to tackle the friendships first. So interestingly, for guys who have kids and you're still married and getting divorced, what have you, when you have kids, at least in my experience, you tend to make friends because you're doing kid activities. So you meet the parents and you hang out. And so my social group from when I was a bachelor to married to having kids changed considerably. There's a couple of core people I still have good friendships with from way back when. But when I went through my divorce, the friendship pool shifted for a variety of reasons, and I didn't expect this. So I had a couple of friends who had to move out of state because of jobs, things like that. I was like, oh, that's a bummer. And the reason I mentioned that, guys, if you're going through divorce or even if you're post-divorce but you're struggling, you need someone to talk to. And for me, it was talking to guys I could trust, confident advisors, if you will. Even if they'd been through divorce or not, I just need to get off my chest to talk, because I was getting feedback that I was stressed during my divorce, and friendships were key. The other interesting aspect that I did not appreciate with the friendship, those friends that I developed through having kiddos, and once we split, you could see the migration of some of the couples, and some of the guy friends that I had slowed down over time just for a variety of reasons. But as a divorced guy, I had to sit there and say, wow, because they don't approve of divorce, are they not going to talk to me anymore? Or are they going to accept me? And you don't know until you get there, which is not a great feeling. Fortunately, I have some truly core 4 or 5 guys that I stick with throughout, and they've watched me go through this whole process, and they're always there. But my friendship group has definitely changed from when I was pre to married, divorced, and now on the other side, as far as who I hang out with. My kids are grown. Some of the parents that were in my kids' groups were still in touch, and those are the friendships that I truly value because they stuck by me throughout the entire process. I'm going to flip this and go to the family side. I'm going to stick to my core family, love them to death, get it. They support you through the dating, the marriage, they support you. And I did not share a lot of details with my immediate family member. I have 3 older sisters, a younger brother, and 2 parents who are still alive. When I went through my divorce, I shared very little with them for a variety of reasons. When we got through the divorce, paperwork got signed, etc., I received some unsolicited feedback with regards to little things such as the impression of the marriage, child rearing, the house, what it looked like, things like that, which I did not expect. And guys, if you're getting feedback like this from your friend, it is what it is. You take it as you go. You take the feedback. And the reason I frame this, there's one aspect of divorce that a lot of people don't discuss, that I've actually discussed on several podcasts with people. Think twice before you react or respond. And the reason no matter how vitriol your spouse or your ex-spouse is being, think twice about this. And the reason I share this with you, with your group here, as a paramedic, I've seen what happens when it doesn't. And yes, I've been called to domestic scenes where somebody hit somebody and it was because of a divorce per se, or divorce proceedings. And now you just complicated. And if you're the person who hit, you've just complicated your divorce. And people are like, why are you telling us this? Because there's a concept called offense versus defense, and how this plays out and is when you're in a divorce scenario, whoever tells the other first, I want a divorce, I'm on the offensive because I have a checklist in my head of what I want to do, boom, 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 versus when you receive the message, you're on defensive now and you're reacting. And especially for guys, because if you're getting out of the blue or it's there's been stress already, watching how you react to being told is key. And the reason I say this is with your friendships, just be aware that not everyone's going to agree with you going through divorce. Your family may not agree, but ultimately it's your life. And guys, you want to be happy. And no matter what happens in your divorce, you've got to protect you. And if you have kids, you got to protect your kids.
No, 100%. And you, man, you couldn't be more right about things of that nature. And then, as we venture into, like, as you went through your divorce, and now you have two beautiful grown kids, right? And thank God they're safe, they're raised, they're secure. Now they're off on their own. You already taught them. But what was the toughest part of guiding your children through that breakup? You kind of mentioned you worked in communication and talked with your kids about it earlier, right? Is it okay to ask us anything? Did you say that to your kids? Like, is it okay to talk to them about the divorce? What was those conversations like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the kids knew something was up. The kids are perceptive. Michael, do you have kiddos?
Yes. I actually, from my previous relationship, I had 2 girls and a son.
Okay, so you can appreciate. So for myself going through this, we were all in the same roof. They could tell. Even friends would come over to pick me up to do stuff. They could tell the tension. They said, "Dude, as soon as you open the door to your house, you can feel the tension." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know that." You're right. And so I was like, "Eek," and we were fairly. You could just tell something was off. So we were going through, and the kids could get perceptions. And I very distinctly remember sitting down. We did a family meeting, is what we did, Michael, to tell the kids who were officially going to get separated. And we sat down on the living room floor. My son was to my right, then my daughter, I believe, then my ex there. And my son was leaning against me, and I felt terrible. I knew we had to tell them that we were going through this, but it was one of the most difficult conversations that I've ever had to have. And I'll be candid with your group. I'm sitting there, I'm a guy, I'm trying to be all stoic, etc., and go through this whole process. And I'm looking at my kids and saying, we love you and we want to tell you something. Mom and dad are struggling and we're going to separate. And my son leaned in a little bit harder against me. And Michael, all of a sudden I felt a single tear go down my cheek. And I was like, and I'll never forget this because it's left a big, I'm like, man, I got to keep it together, which I did per se, but man, my emotions were all over the place. My heart rate was beating and my hands were all sweaty doing this whole process. And we did this at home in a comfortable environment. We didn't have phones or anything else around. No tech. It was just the 4 of us having a very close family discussion. And I think through the divorce itself, some of the hardest parts of this, and this has evolved for me, recognizing this through the development of the program, plus having conversations, because I'll keep it short and to the sweet. My son grew up, when he was growing up, he was doing inline hockey, and I used to coach his team and skate with him and everything else. We spent hours at Skate City, and we switched to ice and to travel hockey. We spent so much time together. It was awesome. I knew him inside and out. We had a great camaraderie and everything else. We still do today. It's just different. He switched to skiing. And I'm not talking just a little ski. I'm talking competitive level, semi-pro skier guy who it's not like a rink where I can drive up and go watch him do it. He's on the backside of some mountains in Colorado doing cliffs and stuff. I'm like, I'm out. I'm like, I can't do this. And so it happens all of a sudden, he's living his life, which I'm like, go, go, go. And his mother, my ex, is basically a pro skier as well. They're like doing their thing. And it was good. But for me, not seeing my son as much as I had was brutal for that relationship. For my daughter, very similar. When we were split up, one was living on one side of Denver, the other one on the other side of Denver, our commute. And I used to drive my daughter before she had her license back and forth to things on the different side of town. Well, we just bonded. She was studying a car. If she had classes, because we were sharing, time, what have you. When she got her license, she's the older of the 2. As soon as she got her license, boom, see ya. She's got her license. She's got the key. She's got the car. She's got her freedom. And even I just sat there going, wow. And then you get to a certain point where the kids are driving enough, they can now carpool, take the son. And so all of a sudden, having 2 kids at home, or we're shuttling them around, is gone. And it's that the windshield time thing, the expression, missing that has been big time for me. The other part that's tough, just because of logistics and distance, is how much time and when kids grow up and they move out and they do their own thing, it's just tough. And I will say one of the hardest times for me with regards to the overall divorce process and everything else, the first night I came home from family outing back to my house where my ex and both of my kids were at her place. There was no dogs, nothing. It was just a house, a 4-bedroom house. Me, I walk in and I hear this. And I'm like, oh man, I got to do something different because this is not good. Earpods came in, got myself a cocktail. I'm like, that is it. So those are some aspects of the emotional impact and the transitions that I never expected this. And when people describe divorce, man, I'm like.
So question, do you ever truly heal from your divorce, or do you develop a scab or a scar? from it where, I guess it's healed, but the evidence is still, there?
In my opinion, you've always got a scar. You can heal from it, but you're divorced for life. And I've had a couple clients who have been divorced more than once. I empathize with them because they've got relationship A, relationship B. And I think for those, especially those individuals, they're always recovering because you've got all the extra stuff. For myself, and what I tell guys that are in the program as well, consider divorce. Yeah, you had stuff happen. Yeah, it could be tough and challenging. But you have a new chapter ahead of you regardless, and you can't control what your ex is going to do. All you can control is how you react and what you do going forward. And I've told several guys, I said, dude, you have a brand new fresh door. Go through the door. It's a new chapter. Define it the way you want it and go from there. Yeah. Great example here. So we got separated in 2009, divorced on 2013, just because we were letting the dust settle and taking care of some stuff. And finally, we said we got to sign the paperwork. And I didn't date or anything else while going through this process. I wanted to clean for myself to be dating. And so the new chapter, new door opens. I was very active the last couple of years, dating apps, things like that, because I wanted to be with someone who cares for me and have that foundation. So I'm now 3 years into a very wonderful relationship with my girlfriend. And had I not gotten divorced, etc., I would not have met her or her son and been introduced to the family. So it's a brand new opportunity. It's a matter of how you frame that. And the other interesting aspect of this as well, you mentioned that you still have the challenge of your spouse back there, and it's not always easy and cooperative, etc. How other people who haven't been divorced, so my girlfriend wasn't divorced. She was a single mom. And so there's a lot of aspects of divorce that she's like, wait a minute, you're friendly with your ex as you go through? She's like, I always hear about this contentious stuff. I go, yeah, we keep it friendly. That's just how we've approached it. And so it's interesting to get that perspective as well. So just to give you some context.
It's pretty cool. And guys, as we continue to talk, the chat is open. If you got a question for our guests, drop it below. Be bold, be courageous. Get in the conversation. Again, with these unfiltered conversations, nothing is off the table. We talk about any and everything. So I thank you guys for your opportunity to be here today. And as we go through these conversations, and do not be scared to ask questions accordingly. Man, it's wonderful. Well, the conversation is wonderful. You kind of talked about it being in the house alone, when you made that transition, the kids are at her house, you go home to a 4-bedroom home all alone. Divorce, I think personally, and just my experience, divorce can be very lonely, a lonely road for men, right? And speaking for me, just terribly lonely. And statistics show that men often face intense emotional distress and even loneliness after the divorce. In your journey, and you said you kind of put on headphones and earpods and had a drink and tied one on, but how did you get through those periods of darkness, anxiety, and isolation?
That is a super question. And I'm going to tie it as far as even that level to the next level where you start waking up at night because you can't sleep, because your head won't shut off and your brain won't shut off. I'm a huge advocate of getting outside to get fresh air and just to walk. And for me, that allows me to venture out. And what I've told my clients is if there's something you enjoy doing, a hobby or something, do that and do it consistently, because it's something it helps you burn off the anxiety, the stress level, and it goes from there. Because if you don't, your stress level is going to continue to rise, and that's going to impact your personal life and your work life. And I'm preaching from personal experience with some feedback I received. The other thing that I never thought I would do that I did on my own is actually went and saw a therapist for a few times, had some sessions, because I wanted to make sure that I was thinking through things clearly and that I wasn't missing anything, and that they weren't observing something in me that was off because of how quiet it was and because of where we were at. The other part of this that I forced myself to do is I said to myself, Paul, you're in a situation now, you're divorced. This is a chapter in your life. You will get through this. And this is not easy to do. I mean, when you're sitting in a house by yourself and there's nothing else going on, and all you have to, the worst thing is you have time to think, process, and worst case scenario stuff, and you're your worst devil's advocate. And so going through this, I forced myself to remain physically active to burn off the stress. I'm a huge cyclist, and I inline skate with poles and stuff, and so that's being very candid. I would do that if the weather was good. Even if it wasn't, I would be out and doing something physical. I went and had some stuff put in my basement for some gym stuff, so I'd have a gym to work out in the morning. And the other aspect of this that I went through is I made sure to not overconsume anything, like whether it's cocktails, what have you, on a regular basis, just because I wanted to have an even keel. And managing that, it took time. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to lie. And sometimes me just going to a library, going out somewhere and getting out of the house was huge, and even going for a walk. I've had other guys say to me, Paul, the best thing I did was to actually go visit with friends. I'm like, spot on. You go find somebody to talk to and go from there. And knowing that you're going to make a decision. And one of the decision points I made was to take the time of the quietness to do some work on the house so that I could eventually rent the house out, get an apartment, have the house out rented, and have an apartment, just consolidating my life little by little, and then having storage rooms with stuff. And people saying that's a lot of activity. It is, but it's important because it's keeping yourself busy, preoccupied, and things like that. The other aspect is if guys aren't sure what to do, I definitely encourage them to go to therapy, because you don't want to go down the cascading road where if you know, for example, you have underlying mental health issues or what have you, this is a fantastic opportunity to not go down that path. And I say that out of support for guys not. But a quiet house after having a whole family there and pets and everything else, that's just brutal. And it takes time.
I wanted to ask you as we go into it, and you was kind of alluding to it a little bit, where you was talking about you talk to men a lot of times as they going through a situation. I was wondering, like for you in your practice, especially with your program, you help hundreds of guys. What would you say is one of the biggest problems that they deal with when it comes to accepting this divorce?
Two aspects of this. When a guy is looking at a divorce, they're either going to accept it up front or they're not. And if you're in denial about the whole process, that's a huge roadblock. And the only person who can get through it is you, the person who's denying this whole thing. The person who's accepting of it, in my opinion, is going to be so much easier. And believe it or not, there are situations where I get a client in, for example, who's like, this isn't happening to me. This isn't happening to me. I'm like, dude, you don't need to be with me. You need to go see a marriage counselor to see if you can't salvage this thing before you come to me, because I'm more of the guy who's accepting it and realizing it's going to go down that path. The guys listening may be saying, why would you do that? Because even though you are in a situation where you're facing potential divorce, if you're in denial about the whole thing, that's just going to make going through all this process more difficult, versus if you're realizing it is. And the other thing I tell guys is this does not have to be the end of the world. And then all of a sudden you get the feedback of, well, Paul, dude, I'm not independently wealthy, and divorce is going to cost a lot of money, which it can. And you can also do it fiscally conservative as well. And I say, true, but you can be smart about how you go about this. And so I would say the biggest thing first is accepting the denial versus not denial. I think the second part of this that guys miss is what we've been talking about, which I think is huge. And it's the emotions, the mindset, and the heart set. Because if you don't recognize that, who knows what's going to happen. But I'll use myself as an example. And I've actually we include in the program feedback from other guys who went through divorce as well. So they're not just hearing from my perspective. And there's been several guys who said the same thing to me, is when we went through this, we completely missed how the emotional aspect would kick in. And I remember being at work and sitting here doing a project or something else, realizing what time it is, and all of a sudden going, I have to go to mediation. And our mediation was fairly decent. I'm like, oh my goodness, that, my friends, is now impacting your work life and your personal life. And I had friends say to me, we don't know exactly what's going on with you, but you are super intense and you look sound and look super stressed. And I wasn't aware of this. So I think another aspect of this from the guy's perspective, you need to be willing to take input from other people, because if you can't recognize it, how the heck are you going to fix it?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
You know, it's really cool how you said that. Like even what we was talking about earlier, it's like recognizing the stuff that's inside you. Like how you said earlier, I'm looking at my notes. You said how that you waited to date. And that was very, very interesting, right? And now because you decided to wait the date to try to heal yourself, right? Now you have clarity as you have this 3-year relationship with your girlfriend. How long, in your estimation with your program and just talking to men, how long should a man wait before he tie himself down in another relationship?
It's going to vary, and this isn't a cop-out answer for the guys who are listening. This is reality based on the feedback, because it's going to vary per person. What's interesting about this, though, is you need to know if you are emotionally ready to start dating. And let me reframe this a little bit here. I was talking to one person who, as soon as he found out he was getting divorced, he was out and about. He was not yet single, but he was going to mingle, period. And he was going to rock it. And he did. And that's his choice. I chose not to. And I will tell you, the group collectively, I mean, my divorce was over time. So by the time I got to sign the paperwork, emotionally, I was totally over it. One of my mentors was dating a guy who was not emotionally over the divorce or the ex. And she finally was like, I can't date you because you're not ready. And until he was pointed that way, you go from there. The other aspect of this to consider for guys, if you have kiddos and you want to date, not that you have to let the kids dictate your life, but consider where you are at in your own mind, headspace. What are your kids seeing, and how are things with your relationship with your kiddos and your ex as you venture forward? And I just say this because if there's nonstop tension and how you approach a relationship, you're going to be careful, because if you're meeting someone for the first time and getting to know them and you're coming in with this cloud of tension surrounding you, it's going to be a tough start to a relationship period, especially a fresh relationship. And I know guys who have tried to, I'm going to go, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to go. And I'm like, man, you are just wreaking havoc. And it's okay to recognize that you're not ready to date yet. It's okay. And like I said, you get the far contrast. I think the guys who are emotionally ready have taken the time to completely unwind. There's always baggage with divorce, but you get rid of the big baggage so you have a little stuff left, and going from there. And be picky and know what you want. And I'm saying this knowing that there's some people that I've talked to in the past like, Paul, I just want to get out and play the speed dating pool and see what I can come down with and go from there. I'm like, cool. And guys just, every guy is different. I'm like, dude, you do what works for you, man. I'm like, you do you. They're like, why'd you wait? I chose to wait on purpose. I chose.
And I know that for a lot of guys, even just, it could be very, very difficult. For me, I kind of I took the time to, set back, and I started kind of dating again.
Mm-hmm.
I had a girl that I was very interested in. And luckily between me and her, there was a large distance. I was in Germany at the time. She was stateside. So we kind of talked on the phone,
Yeah.
I guess being emotionally available for each other, but having the distance from one another kind of kept us, I guess, from giving everything of ourselves to each other for some years. So that really, really helped, I think. Also, I like to explore, even in your program, do you deal with a lot of gentlemen that necessarily haven't been in a marriage? Do you find it in your practice that a lot of gentlemen have just been in a long relationship? Like, for instance, I have family members right now who've been in a 12+ relationship, 2 kids, never been married. One of the couple wants to get married. The other is kind of hesitant, kind of finding every excuse not to ever get married, right? If a relationship like that break up, I'm not sure in your practice, have you dealt with that? Is it like a divorce, or do you still treat it as such? Or?
Great question. And so every state, and so yes, I've had clients come in with a scenario where they're cohabitating, they're not married, but they're going to go and split. And it's tough. And here's some of the spenders you have to consider with this whole thing. Depending upon where your relationship, what state you're in, goodness, what do they call it? Now I'm going to draw a blank, but they have it where if you've been residing together, you are considered married.
Yeah.
And other things to consider here, because, and you bring up a very valid point here, all of the components of divorce detox apply to any long-term relationship or a serious relationship, especially when you look at things such as commingling funds, checking accounts, savings accounts, a house, an apartment. As soon as you start signing legal documents, mortgages, leases, cars, kids, clothes, colleges, etc., I mean, the whole package is identical. And think about this. So for myself, I've been married once, most likely won't get married again for a variety of reasons. And my girlfriend knows this, she's cool with it. The definition of quote unquote marriage for some guys is going to vary. And I don't need to be married again to have the committed relationship, etc. And what happens is when you start looking at everything you and I have been talking about, even if you're not married and you're just cohabitating and you have a family unit through, and kudos to the people who are doing that and having success. But when you have it where all of a sudden you have friction, everything applies to it, because just because you don't have a license and a ring, everything else still applies. The emotions, the emotional commitment, the emotional involvement, the physicality. You start up, and people do this all the time. They start a family and they're not married, and then they're going to split, and you're going to go through, it's going to be a mirror on mirror thing, Michael, where you're going to go through the same thing and you walk through the same channels. The cohabitation and who owns what is also going to come into play now. And what I tell folks when you do this, and there's actually a guy who, without getting into too many details, I told him before he begins a business venture, he needs to go consult a lawyer and gave the situation to him, because on paper they're not married. However, they have all these receipts. You have your public service, all utilities showing that you've been living together. And now the question is, what does the state consider that to be? Because of now common law, that's it, common law marriage. So if common law marriage is kicked in and you're together, you might be going through a version of a divorce that you never anticipated, and everything applies there. And I would never, if I was in that situation, I would never do it solo. I would go consult a lawyer, and I would start doing my due diligence, my homework right off the bat. And it stinks that they have a situation where they want to get married, and one does and one doesn't, and you can't force the not wanting to get married, because now you're pushing to do something against the will, and that's going to lead to what down the road? Potential animosity, anger, resentment, and it's like, ouch! That's a gut punch too when that happens.
Yeah. You're 100% right. And thank you for providing clarity to that, because, some things I think about, like, man, like having family members been in a long-term relationship. I think, I don't want to say what state they're in,
right.
but I believe in their situation, common law marriage does apply. Trying to give advice is like, hey, you guys kind of already married.
It's true.
You guys better work it out, or saying, or whatever, try to make it, if you guys are going to split, I guess don't have it linger, right?
Correct.
And so that's some things I try to, like, hey, I'm not an expert at this, I don't want to be an expert at this, but saying, just I try to give a little advice of what you do, but I will tell them about your program, and so they can actually explore that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting a lawyer, finding out, the do's and don'ts, so they can protect themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's me saying that isn't bad. And so what happens is, depending upon who the client is, there's often times where they will ask me a question about like finances. And I can give you the high level finance stuff. I'm not a CPA, guys. And so what's going to happen is, when it gets to the nuts and bolts, I'm going to go see a financial planner or what have you. Your scenario you just mentioned, I'm going to have this, I'm going to turn them that way. You get a couple who's going through divorce and something happens, whether it's domestic violence during the divorce process, again, reflect out. And to your point, you don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers either. And you can only put so much into a program where you cover so many topics. And so I've actually had it where I've referred to other peers of mine who specialize in areas. I say, go see them because they know how to do that. You don't want me telling you, because I'm not going to give you the answers you're looking for. So I think what you just said just now, as far as give me some advice and tell them to go see a lawyer and things like that, that's the route I would take. Heck, in those situations, you can also even consider saying you have nothing to lose by going to one session of mediation, just to see. Worst case scenario, you both walk out of there, same set of feelings. And you just, we just confirmed it. We, cemented it per se, and things. And the other part of this is important that just popped in my mind just now. If kids are involved, especially if they're younger kids, you are modeling how you react to an adult situation. And so kids will see this and they take that with them and they watch it and then go from there. So it's very interesting, the different scenarios and how you navigate those waters, for sure.
Yeah. And it's crazy because it brings me to a quote in which you said, when it comes to divorce, most men feel railroaded and they think they expect to figure it out on their own. Unfortunately, that's the wrong answer. Mm-hmm. And you said the wrong text or comment could land them in a world of hurt. You kind of mentioned it earlier as well. Mm-hmm. That's why I created a Divorce Detox. What are some of the wrong choices have you seen, or common pitfalls that you warn men about divorce?
This is a great question, and so I'll pick on a few here. Social media, it's everywhere, and it doesn't matter whether it's an app or a text. I especially tell guys, and it's easy for me to say this and easy for you and I to talk about it versus being in the heat of the moment. And I've screwed this up in the past as well via text. If you're about to send off a fiery text, draft it, delete it, take 90 seconds and hold off before you do anything. Don't do hasty things like this, because once it's out, and the internet's unforgiving. And so that's one thing I've seen from a pitfall that's huge. I'm serious. The other part of this, especially when going through divorce or you're thinking about going, family gatherings, oh my word, the tension is palpable in how you react and respond. Paul, what are you talking about? So great holidays to be super aware of what you're doing, especially if you like to drink with your meals and celebrate like Thanksgiving, Christmas, what have you, or any of those holidays, is be careful about consuming too much alcohol and the emotions may start kicking in, and all of a sudden you had a cocktail or two, and the expression loose lips sink ships. Well, yeah, loose lips can definitely destroy ships, for that matter. The other part of this that I'm going to say, and not all of your listeners are going to agree with this, and people who watch this are going to say, Paul, I can't do that. I'm a firm believer in keeping an open mind. No matter how ugly things are getting, try to keep an open mind. Why? Not keeping it open, in my opinion, you miss clues or hints. And I've had people say to me, Paul, you're so out of it because I can't stand her. or him. I want out, out, out. I'm serious, because it's not just the heterosexuals that go through this. It's, the gay couples as well. And there's some people out there who get so pissed. I'm like, dude, you got to do you. But I would just, before you go into your mediation, before you do stuff, take a deep breath and go for a walk, do something. Watch emotions. The other part of this, a huge pitfall, in my opinion, and I've seen this, and this is just painful. There's two parts to this. One is leveraging kids against the other. That's cruel. And Paul, I don't care. The kids are part of mine too. I get that too. I'm just saying, you came to me. I'm telling you, just don't leverage kids. The other one that occurred to a client recently, the money got taken out of the accounts, and it was a very wealthy person. And he's like, "You want divorce? I get you a divorce." All the money's gone, and now you have a 20-plus year marriage falling apart, and she is going to have a big fat goose egg in her account because he took the money. And the problem, there's several different things about this. The short version, optically, for the court, it doesn't look nice. And you can have a judge, and depending upon the state and the rules, I'm looking at my notes here, that can have some serious consequences, because you're not playing nicely. The other pitfall of this, if you are, and it's not so much a pitfall, this is reality, and I've seen this before, and this is brutal, where you end up getting a couple who are going to get divorced. They're at each other's throats. They can't be in the same room together. And so instead of being the couple doing the divorce, it's lawyer versus lawyer. And there's all kinds of ramifications on that. And those are the really big, those are the big bit. And sometimes just being aware how that, it's the lawyer versus lawyer thing. The expenses go up automatically, and you go from there. And I want to preface this for the group to all this, and I'm a guy on the other side. Some of these, there's no right to have a situation. Divorce, it's just toxic and not going well. You got to do what you got to do, and you got to take care of yourself, guys. And it's not sounding machoistic or anything. It's just brutal reality. You've got to take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, it's you, yourself, and you until you find another partner, if that's what you choose. So I think those are some aspects to consider, and I hope you don't take my pitfall of what the lawyer versus lawyer is a pitfall. It's mostly just a huge expense, and sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
No, I put my head up because you're so right. Like I wanted to work out things amicably as much as possible, but you can't make some other person do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So it cost me a lot. It cost me over $20K for my divorce. It was over a time period from 2000, I believe, 17 to 2021.
Yeah.
I think it's 21. So it took, because I was overseas, so the proceedings paused until I got back stateside, even though I asked that it continue so I wouldn't run into this, money thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's painful for sure.
Oh yeah, 100%. So I was paying rent.
No doubt. And so what's interesting here, just to give you guys context on this as well. So you're paying out that well. So I'm going through divorce pre, during, and after with a layoff. And there's child support involved and all this other stuff. And so while you're dishing out money into lawyers, I was losing the money coming in, and still, according to my memo of understanding, still cutting checks and everything else because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And fortunately, I was in a scenario we could accommodate a little bit differently. I do know of another couple who went through divorce, and it was lawyer versus lawyer, and accountants talking through. It was super, super complicated and super ugly. And I was like, man, not only did they pay for the lawyer stuff, but the accountants, they paid for their summer condos too.
Man. And you kind of talk about that with financial discipline.
Yeah.
You stress the importance of the financial discipline during a divorce. You said budgets regardless. You said budgets regardless to how wealthy or not wealthy you are is still a good practice.
Yes.
Why is that such a great practice, especially going through a divorce?
I'm going to pick on myself on this one. This is a great example. I was actually working on this today. So being fiscally responsible for yourself, guys, in my opinion, regardless of whether you're married or not, is important. I mean, and some guys are like, I don't care. I got the money. It's millions. I don't need it. Yeah, but you want to know where your money is being spent. At least I would. And the reason I say that budgeting is so important is because there's always the unknown of what's going to happen and what's going to happen with your money. And I'm a planner. I'm a guy who wants to put stuff out black and white. And specific to divorce, I want to know what my pre-divorce is, my during divorce, and my post-divorce. And some of these you can't do in advance because you don't know, Paul, which is my case specifically. And so when I was married and even dating, we commingled funds. My ex managed our budget. And she would come to me with a big expense that we mutually agreed. We said, look, small monthly ongoing stuff we just pay. But if we're going to buy a car or something, we would consult with each other, look at the budget, see where we're at. For myself, a huge pitfall, Paul didn't pay attention to the budget on a regular basis because we were on
Mm-hmm.
autopilot with my ex doing, and we were cool with this. I get divorced and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to see what's on auto pay versus not. When are things due, and have a budget, know what my budget running line is. And the other part of this, if you don't know what your baseline budget is, how the heck are you going to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how you're going to get to the end of this thing? What your
Mm-hmm.
income is now and what your expenses are, they will change. And in my opinion, they change at least 3 times. There's the before the divorce, there's the during divorce when you spend all the money on the lawyers, right? And mediation, all this other stuff. Then there's the post divorce where now you're post divorce, but you still have a person there. Are you paying child support, what have you? Because you didn't have child support and spousal support built into your budget when you were married, guys. You've now added lines of expenses in. And I know some guys who had decent incomes, got divorced after years and years and years of growing kids, and they're adding some line items to their budget. There's one specific case I'm thinking of that's this guy is going to be spending so much money on spousal support. It's huge, and it's close to $1 million over a period of time. And he's in his 50s and he wants to retire and he's not independently wealthy. I'm like, how are you going to pull this one off? I'm like, you need to go talk to a financial advisor like now. And to me, and before I got divorced, I would never be saying this stuff because I was on autopilot. Now I balance my budget usually a couple of times a month, especially when credit card bills are due and mortgages, what have you. But I think for the guys, in my opinion, it's a good practice to get in because you know where your money is at. And if you have kids, you especially want to know where the cash flow is because what if a kiddo has an event coming up or something else? How's your money flowing? And for myself personally, and I'll pick on me, and I have a good friend of mine who's in the same boat. We watch our budgets, and when we don't watch our budgets, that leads to anxiety for both of us. Because now I'm like, well, what the heck is this, and what's going on here? Because as soon as you start you have a baseline stress level divorce, reduce the stressors on top of it, like a budget, like going to a therapist, like getting outside, getting some fresh air, because it all ties in together. That's a long-winded answer, and I'll end with this one on as far as the budget goes. So some guys are like, I have never done a budget, Paul. Google it, man. Go find yourself a basic budget, download the template, add some columns and rows, what have you, and just start somewhere. And even if you have to scratch it on paper and then put it into a spreadsheet or whatever later, start somewhere because something is better than nothing. You start off small, and there's apps you can download to your phones to it. This way you're informed too, and you know where the cash flow is going. Maybe you come into some money and you can all of a sudden find out you can afford that holiday trip, whatever, the vacation, things like that. But yeah, one of my big misses in this whole thing was me having to play catch up with my budget, which I've been divorced for several years. It's all good. I have my budget for the most part. There's a few things coming up, like little things like my daughter graduated from college. Did you plan for that one in addition to the 529? And if going to add one more flavor to this, are you going to travel with the ex-in-laws and kiddos, or how's that going to play out? Because it all ties into who's paying for what as well at the end.
You're right.
Couple layers.
You're right. Yeah, and I like how you say always you got to be intentional about the different things, and it's just, I don't know, it's amazing. Let's zoom out for a second, right? And I would say, what is the number one takeaway you want every man listening to this conversation to remember about overcoming divorce?
Happens every day. You will get through this, and it's a new chapter. And I don't say any of that lightly. And it's one of those perspectives you can get through it. People have done it every day, and it's a new chapter. And those are the kind of the key things I tell the people at the end of the day. Because everything else below that, beneath that, Michael, when you start looking at divorce and all the pieces, they're all pieces of the bigger picture where you want to get to a level of happiness and you want to move forward. Even if you have an ex, whether it be female or male, who can't stand, and you guys are in that situation, you, at the end of the day, you deserve happiness. So continue going down that path and leverage the tools that you have available to let yourself be successful. You don't have to do this by yourself, and leverage it, because even though there's a lot of guys who come in, Paul, I'm the perception, macho guy. Yeah, I get that, but still realize you're a human at the end of the day, and you want to get through this thing to move forward. So take a breath, keep a perspective. Divorce has been occurring since, marriages started. So you too shall get through it. And it's easy to say that, good days and bad days, but you can get through it.
Yeah, 100%. And that goes to the caveat of like I know in your program you probably quote the statistics and whatnot, how I think it was around 70-80% of women initiate the divorce. I mean, guy or girl, right? Divorce is bad. But in your estimation, men come on this. What is the main things do you think that in your program you wish you can provide, but legally probably through some, or just with all that you really can't, that you have to tell them that, hey, go get with this expert here?
I think that, and so in answering this legally, what I wish I could tell them, but I can't or don't, on this whole aspect is if you're going to have an affair that leads to your divorce, then you got to pay the consequences for the affair. Someone once said to me, "Goodness, great! There's a program out there. I don't want to say the name because I don't want to perjurize or anything like that." So, to your point, my answer is: once you get done having your affair, come on over because you're going to go down this path. But I can't tell people that legally. And the other thing is that because this is a tough one as well. Cases of domestic violence, because that happens, and both as a paramedic and just doing this, I've seen it where it's domestic violence, and you have to be careful of which direction you send them in. The other aspect of it is because I'm not a lawyer or a CPA, I defer out, and the program touches on a lot of topics that can be spoken to at a high level. I think the aspects, and there's going to be scenarios that come in that I've never even heard of before from people, which happens every day. People like, I have X, Y, and Z. I'm like, I've never heard of this before, but you go for it. Like, she jumped on the hood of my car last night, ripped off the windshield wiper blades and everything else. I'm like, okay, that's a contentious as heck thing. You got to take care of yourself. You might want to consider going to get a restraining order. And so one thing I do is tell the guys on this, Child Protective Services, when you're in an ugly situation, is making sure the kids are taken care of and going from that aspect as well. Did that answer the question that you posed? I want to make sure.
100% so. 100%
All right, cool.
Before we wrap up, I want to kind of refocus for a moment. Paul, after everything you experience and now teach, what does Divorce Detox truly mean to you in your essence? And how do you sum up your mission to someone in 1 or 2 sentences?
Divorce Detox was very intentionally designed to help guys get through their divorce as successfully as possible, amicably if possible as well, which is not always the case. The 50% of divorces or marriages, roughly ballpark speaking, end up in divorce. And there's tools out there. We want to be able to give a tool to help guys get through this because a lot of the programs are female focused or involved going off site, but it's the digital age. We can take scenarios, put it on a platform, let guys go. They don't have to broadcast what they're doing. They can do this on their own. And it's not just the fluff we put out there. We put out the learning objectives and activities for them to do because you don't have to go through it by yourself, guys. People have been doing this for years, and we really just want to create a tool to help do that. And I think that's the overall arching mission of this entire model, is to help out. And I blame my mentor, and not blame, I'm kidding. She pushed me in this direction. Never thought I'd be in this thing. Trust me, I never thought this was going to be the path I was going to take. But that's the whole focus of it. And I'll end with this as well. This is cool. So the last few months, I've actually been on some female hosted podcasts from Asia and India, which I was like, what? And the reason they invited me was because of the emotions, the mindset, and the heartset components of Divorce Detox. And they said, Paul, regardless of the state laws, regardless of the religion, the concepts apply the same. And that's when I said, whoa. I was like, wow, I didn't even conceive that. And for them to bring that to my attention, that was cool.
Yeah. Well, Paul, if you have anything else you want to relay to our listeners, the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Yeah, I'd say to the guys, again, you're not on your own. The conversation that Michael and I had flowing back and forth, 2 very different divorces, and that's the world we live in. And you don't have to go through it by yourself. And I'd welcome folks, if they're interested, I'll put in the chat a freebie that you guys can go and download so you can get a free resource. And honestly, for the guys out there, my perspective is trying to work through divorces as amicably as possible. That's not always the case. And to use little things like checklists and stuff, which we include because there are so many pieces and components and details in divorces that I did not appreciate going through. Because when I went through my divorce, I was grasping at straws, man. I didn't have a place where I could go cradle to grave, if you will, to figure that whole concept out as far as how you get through divorce successfully. And so I think from guys out there, if you're interested, I'd be happy to chat with you for a few minutes. Feel free to reach out. I'll put my email, some contact info in the chat as well. But again, if you're going through divorce, hang in there. You will survive. Go through it. And if you need help, reach out for the resources that are out there. And you got Michael and I both been divorced, both here talking about 2 different worlds, different experiences. Both have kiddos that are growing up, living lives, so it's doable. Just a matter of taking your time, catching your breath, and just pausing occasionally, like me right now. Pause.
Thank you so much, Paul, for your insights and also for your program, because I'll be honest, like having your program is a real eye opener and also a help for men out there who are struggling, especially going through a divorce, which is, like I said before, a gut punch. And so
Mm.
I appreciate you. I thank you for all that you do. And everyone, please look up the Divorce Detox. It is a program there to help you as you go through tough situations, especially if you need a mentor or someone like
Mm-hmm.
Paul that you can actually speak to in confidence, knowing that he has been down the road that you guys are looking upon or going down. That's really, really key. Having that person that's knowing where you went, knowing where you're going to go, I can help you through the pitfalls and actually establish a good foundation for you to land on as you go through this. So thank you again, Paul. Totally appreciate you.
Likewise, and
And
nice way to
everyone,
wrap that up. That was awesome.
yes, sir.